Hello and welcome to LanguageCraft for the last episode of Let's Timelapse Season 1. That's a very emotional thing to say. I've been at this series for 2 years, almost to the day. It took 23 months and a half to release 20 episodes in English and in French, as well as 2 behind-the-scenes episodes in French. The town has changed so much. I had no idea it would be so big, in terms of size, but also in regards to the channel and the team itself, all the people who came to help me. And in terms of architecture as well. Each episode brings loads of improvements. Well, thank God after all, but you can definitely see an improvement in my own style as the season progresses, but even more in the team's style. For example, the castle retains detail and relief, but has a lot purer lines than the other massive building in town, the church. It seems like I'm only talking in the past sense and that I'm looking back, but there's still some work to be done. Our first task is to build some sort of dormitory for the dock workers. So that's all the people who work on the harbor, loading and unloading cargo on and off merchant ships that stop here. We spoke previously about the commissary who has his own building next to the harbor and who oversees taxes and all import and export for the Lord. But of course, he's not going to be doing any physical work. So apparently the dock workers who did that work lived where they worked, and so we had left just enough room for a last building to finish off the harbor here. So a little pro tip for anyone who might someday meet and build with Théophile. Never let him draw up the layout for a building. He placed blocks here and there with beams coming out all over the place with nothing symmetrical, so we thought it was perfect. It fit the theme, and we started building it. However, you may notice that I'm spending a lot of time on the roof, because it was really hard to bring everything together. Some roofs were odd-numbered, others were even-numbered, it was a nightmare. So really keep that kind of thing in mind when you're planning out your builds, as it might come back to bite you in the ass later on. Even more so for the interiors of your buildings. That was even worse here. I tried to get Théophile to do it himself, to man up to his own creation, but I ended up having to do it myself. That problem with the interior explains why some people, including a couple within LanguageCraft actually, and even myself at the time of Aqua, my very first Minecraft city 4 years ago, who build the interior first and then fit walls around it. Today I don't think it's a very good technique, but it's important to keep every aspect of the build in mind when planning it out. Actually, very recently we built a city for collaboration, which should come out sometime in November, and in the periphery we have some houses that are 3 times 3 blocks inside, which is ridiculous. That's not an actual house, not even a shack. Anyway, we're finishing off the harbor, and we added a building on the left. Originally we wanted to have a burnt down house there, but we forgot and ended up destroying a house a little further in the village to have that feeling of a living town, as well as the house under construction next to the cemetery. You can't really see it, but this building here is the blacksmith. We built a huge oven out of cobblestone, which is better than its old spot next to the market, where the house didn't have any defining marks to it. This area truly became an extension of the market, as you can see here with new stalls appearing next to the fort's walls. Also, the appearance of the map's first custom tree, even built under your very eyes. It was built by Bed, who is making another one on the right. He starts off by building the trunk, block by block, and uses World Edit to make all the sides log with the blocks 17, 12. And finally, he uses a brush to add leaves on the branches. During that time, the others are in the market extension, adding atmosphere and elements lying around. We are also improving the main market, among other things with new trees, and you may notice that there are several types of leaves, which adds depth in my opinion, perhaps even a little more realistic in terms of looks. As for the rest, we're modifying every single stall. They are over 1.5 years old and haven't aged well. They were all flat, with no slabs or anything. It doesn't necessarily jump out at you, but walking around you can really tell the difference. For example, the house we're flying over now is the butcher's shop. Oriendo told me it was really important, and so I wanted to make something special, with several rooms, one to store, for example, and another to cut up the carcasses. It's very important to think about a building's function and not make it completely basic. It's interesting to think about the whole thing. You'll be able to see that all for yourself when you download the map, but more on that towards the end of the video. This is a very short shot. Very special because it makes up for something that I could never remember to do throughout the whole season. Chimneys. I could never remember and would always realize I had forgotten them after the shot had moved on to something else. So I thought I would make it an actual shot rather than do it off camera. Not much to say except that chimneys were very important. They didn't have central heating or anything in those days, so it was fire or nothing. They would freeze. Two things to notice, however. The first one is that all of the smoke is blowing in the same direction. It's always blown away by the wind coming from the sea. And the second thing is that not all chimneys are lit, because of course not every single family would have its fire going at the same time. Another short shot is something we had thought of a long time ago. For most of the season we built in Minecraft 1.5, but when we moved on to 1.7 we gained access to stained glass, which are of course perfect for the church. Except for the rosettes and the main windows, we went for gradients, going between all the different color patterns we had set up. It adds a new dimension, and anyway, I had originally said that you would get the map in 1.7, but I'm happy we were able to update earlier to make use of all these additions, put it right in the map and be able to show you everything being built. We're also adding a wall around part of town. For a long time I fought this idea, among other things, because it would be against the church, which to me didn't make much sense. Actually, it turns out that some towns indeed have a wall against the church. But in the end, while going around the village with Oriendo, writing down everything that needed to be changed, we thought we could build only part of a wall. This continues to show the town's evolution, so you can see on the left that it looks like it's in ruins, but it actually is in the process of being built. We also added carts, logs, a crane. And if it were finished, the wall would join up with the fort on the left, and on the right would probably go around the cemetery and put a foot in the river, just across from the castle. Or actually, it could even join up with the castle. I really like this idea of having evolving elements here and there, and construction sites always look nice and chaotic, with a lot of atmosphere. It was also the opportunity to build another diagonal structure, which we had already done on the wall at Terence Hill, one of our time-lapses, and actually the collaboration I told you about earlier. It's often much more interesting than a simpler shape. And finally comes the most important part of the episode, the vegetation. What we had so far was only really a placeholder, all the trees that I placed 19 episodes ago during the terraforming episode. And actually, we talked about that recently and concluded that the terraforming was probably the map's weakest point, as it was the first one I ever did, and it's 2 years old. For the next one I will definitely ask help from the team's terraformers. They have advanced techniques and a lot more experience than me. Anyway, rather than use the game's default trees, which aren't all that exciting to be honest, we went ahead and placed our own custom trees. Apart from a couple exceptions, all the trees and bushes were made by Micromega, whom you might remember from the Fort and Sheriff, and he was originally supposed to place down all the trees with me. But since then he has stopped playing Minecraft. He made a long list of trees including oak trees, beech trees, pine trees, etc. We made others since then, like the huge one that was just placed down, but they tend to be just a little too fantasy oriented, so they wouldn't really fit in such a historically oriented map. We're really going for realism with smaller trees, mostly oaks, I think. We went all the way to the manor, far away, put back all the tall grass, and it makes a world of difference. I mean, if the town were a jewel, the forest around it would be its case, and as such, it shouldn't be neglected. And here we are. Now the town is truly finished. Now here is a foretaste of a future cinematic that will come out in a few weeks, the same kind as the ones I make for LanguageCraft's maps in general. And rather than focusing my shots on one area like I do usually, I'm going through the whole town with low shots that really show off all the atmosphere that we added in this episode. We're starting off at the southeastern end of town, next to the fort and the sheriff's office. Then we're passing through an archway to the extension of the market. This whole time I've been talking about the town, and it's taken me 20 episodes to find it a name. Originally I wanted to find one for the 10th episode. I didn't manage. And this very voiceover was delayed several days because I needed a name to record it. But we finally have a name. St. William on Sea. So, why that name? Well, Saint, because religion is very present in this town between the huge church and the commandery that's just behind the camera, where the camera currently is. And William is a reference to me, since Bill is my nickname, but it's also the nickname or diminutive for William. It's a fun idea to have a reference to the creator in the name, but I didn't want anything blatant like silver or anything like that. And finally, on sea, because the harbor is an important part of the town's life. I was actually surprised to see that on sea is the proper way of saying it. For some reason, on the sea seems much more natural to me. Anyway, St. William on Sea is quite a long name. It's the long version of the name. I think St. William is how it's going to be called in everyday life. It's quite an English-sounding name, even though the town would probably have been in Normandy in France. But with all the conquests that went on in that region around that time, it would have changed hands many times and kept an English-sounding name. So it makes sense. Now that previous shot with the monastery was the path that leads from the town to the commandery, which I made much more twisty and turny. I thought it isolated the commandery even more, made it feel like it was even further from the town than it is. And this huge tree in the middle of the vines is not necessarily realistic, especially because it's over vines and because it's so big, but it just looks good. And after all, this episode is made to correct historical mistakes, of course, but it's also the opportunity to make things look always better. Next to the castle here is an estover, a sort of pasture, which we hadn't done before I filmed this, we did it afterwards, but that's why we prepared the area with only tree stumps left. This is where most of the Lord's livestock will be, rather than inside the castle proper. So here is a global view of town, which grew so much. I love the fact that we have several big structures that stick out. The castle with its dungeon, of course, the church, the tall galley in the harbor, the small windmill, and of course, the lighthouse. It helps to break up the sea of roofs that would be quite boring otherwise. Thankfully, they're all broken up, which gives them a unique look. I hope you enjoyed this season as much as I did. It was a real pleasure, and I'm going to miss it. Honestly, I don't know if I'm up for a second season yet, but if I am, I already know what building style it's going to be. And as I had said before, it will remain on the same map. I would love to do it, but it's incredibly time consuming for the results it yields. So if there is a second season, it will be on a slightly different format. For example, I'll start with several episodes already finished to make up for the times when we can't shoot for months at a time. But here we are at the end of this amazing season 1 of Let's Timelapse. It was a great pleasure from beginning to end, and as promised, you can now download the map. Here's a top-down view of it. This time we had to make a render because it's become way too big for simple in-game screenshots. It's very emotional to close this off, but we've come to the end. Now, all of them will be in the final cinematic, but a huge thank you to everyone who helped me along the way. For this episode we had Bed, Desd, Mimi, and Théophile who built with me. Of course, Oriendo gave me a lot of history advice as always, even though he was quite busy with his wedding. Congratulations, I'll be following along the same path very shortly. Now I've never mentioned him, but Flubox helped more and more as the season progressed. He's in charge of the LanguageCraft server, and there were a few changes we had to make at the end. The hidden job that people forget, but that really makes ours much easier. Great, well, it's over. Again, I hope you liked it, and in any case, we'll be back with time lapses and cinematics with the whole team, and most likely a season 2 after I've taken the time to breathe a bit and get married. Now, try to guess what the next theme is going to be and leave your ideas in the comments. I'm curious to see if you get close. And don't hesitate to download the map and look for all the Easter eggs, references to the team or even pop culture, as well as the many secret passageways in the castle, with one of them leading out to the countryside. You can use this map for your server or whatnot, as long as you clearly say where it comes from. Now again, thank you to everyone who helped me, as well as all of you who supported us and who encouraged us to do better. Signing off now, see you soon on LanguageCraft. Bye bye.